My Lords, it is indeed an honour to follow the noble Lord, Lord Rowe of West Wickham, who we know has unparalleled expertise, not just as the regulator, but in his service in defence of safety and security in London. Now, I should declare that I'm a member of the Industry and Regulators Committee, but I joined after this report was published. But nevertheless, I do manage a residential block of flats in Norwich. Now, self-evidently, buildings should be sufficiently safe, not just for the residents and occupiers, but visitors, tenants, as well as everybody else. So we've all seen the consequences when things go wrong. When I was a member of the Fire Services Pension Scheme, we had a meeting on the morning of the Grenfell fire in the headquarters of the London Fire Brigade, and none of us really knew the gravity of what was unfurling before us. Those horrors came later. Now, the noble Baroness Taylor has given us the chronology, and I won't detain you on that. But at the outset, I need to say that I have no wish to criticise the regulator or anybody who works within it. They've had to get going under the glare of publicity. There's the move from the HSE to Marsham Street. The regulations had to be revised. Delays were inevitable. Staffing's changed. And let's not rehearse all the difficulties. Our challenge is to look forward and to get the issues fixed in a proportionate manner so that we can get Britain building again. Now, back in about 2019, I sat in the office of the then Secretary of State when the Building Safety Act 2022 was being mooted. And the Secretary of State made the powerful observation that stuck with me. He said that some felt that the Act was in some way, and if implemented, could prevent fire. And, my Lords, I think that misdirection by some was a delusion, because fires will happen. The first purpose, it seems to me, of the Building Safety Act should be to enable people to get out quickly. Clearly, there are ways to prevent fire, slow its spread, compartmentalise, raise the alarm in the event of a conflagration. Nobody wants to see a building burn. But too often, the regulations that have flowed from the Safety Act have placed too great a focus on the purist approach to preserving a building's fabric rather than saving lives. And we must, in my view, restate the balance between protecting the building and getting people out more quickly. Now, the regulations have spawned a huge amount of work, and approaches have inevitably created a bureaucratic monster, especially in older buildings. And there have been, I think it's fair to say, historically, unrealistic assessments of risk, blind to cost, burdened by process delays, all of which has stymied desirable works, whilst has made homes worthless in the meantime. Counterintuitively, in some cases, it's reduced safety, with refurbishments abandoned, increased risk to residents, and the open-ended cost of waking watchers, and unsellable homes. Success was never meant to be like this. Now, obviously, we need to focus on the highest risk buildings and they're the ones hardest to get out of. But this bureaucratic mission creep has blighted otherwise safe buildings. And the fault isn't necessarily with the regulator. All the builders, all the landlords, or whoever is involved directly with the premises. Other actors have contributed to the misdirection, which has blighted buildings and stalled lives. The mission creep has led to 11-metre buildings, for example, which are much safer, much easier to get out of, and if fires do occur, much easier to fight, are finding themselves needlessly tainted in many cases. And the practical example of this misdirection sees uninformed conveyancers egged on by mortgage providers, estate agents, valuation surveyors and insurers demanding unnecessary EWS1 inspections at a specimen cost of £25,000 each, because inevitably intrusive investigations, scaffolding, making good will be required, and legally unnecessary. These EWS1s then need to be repeated every 5 years. It's pointless and it's counterproductive, and it's diverting from the risks of addressing the needs of the really high-rise, high-risk buildings. Now, I'm not making the case to ignore unsafe buildings, but excessive delays over specification and costs are keeping people in unimproved buildings that could be made safe for longer. So people can't move. It takes too long to buy a home. The sales fall through, and of course, house building itself has collapsed in London. And because what happens in London, where there's a disproportionate number of high-rise buildings, follows elsewhere, we're just gumming up the national market. That's why it's important to get this right and to get a grip, not least because we see the perverse consequences if we make it all too difficult for freeholders to do the right thing, especially if the regulatory costs exceed the costs of actually doing the work. They'll just collapse their firms, leaving the leaseholders, those least likely and able to afford it, holding the baby. So Mollior reports that London starts in developments which are disproportionately in London from a peak of 33,774 new starts in London in 2015 to just 5,547 in the first quarter of 2026. So getting this wrong in a city that houses 10 million people is never going to grow the economy at the rate we need to. So how to improve? I'm grateful to Berkeley Homes for telling me that within the regulator we need to streamline the move from Gateway 2 to Gateway 3 as an application moves from idea to reality, and case officers to be passported through on the same application. Because sometimes, and we've heard the reasons why, those regulators or case workers rather, case officers with different views, interpretations or prejudices change, and that adds to delay, risk and cost. It would be helpful if we fix the reinvention of the wheel, where lessons learned from one application can't be passported to another similar development of a common design. We should celebrate innovation, but we must turn against the notion that anything new is intrinsically high risk and then tipped into the lottery of the most complex cases bucket. Such Ludditism will never get roofs over our heads, and we need to recognise, as in the case of the building levy, and it's £90 per square metre in Fulham. It's killing building for little purpose, save to sustain the bureaucracy, and it's not entirely clear how in the particular case of Fulham, which is a high value, that figure was calculated in the first place. Elsewhere, the surveyors, mortgage providers, conveyancers and the rest need to stop demanding legally unnecessarily tickets with impossible burdens of proof that are collapsing sales and trapping people in their own homes. And we've heard and I do think it's churlish, it would be churlish, if we didn't recognise the enormous strides that have been taken on the move from the Health and Safety Executive to Marsham Street. But I think we do need to recognise that we've got to get better from the 22 weeks that we've heard down to the 12-week deadline. And so forth. So look, I'm grateful that Lord Rowe has explained that in order to increase confidence, which is really important, the regular data releases that are showing progress are really important to show that trajectory. That trajectory is going to get developers off the pot, starting building, and that will in turn get the economy moving. Something as simple as that is so welcome. But my main point, my lords, is to restate the purpose of the regulator and the regulations, which is to ensure that if a fire happens, we get people out quickly, creating a council of perfection where every single minor detail is fettled to the nth degree, regardless of cost. It is not helping either the system for new builds or more particularly in older buildings that are crying out for refurbishment. And unless we do get this balance right, especially in our capital city, we'll not be building new homes and people can't get on with their lives.